What's up, guys? Welcome to part 2 of my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, or, as I'm calling it in this rewrite, The Dawn of the Paladins. I know a lot of you guys think that A New Age is the best subtitle out of the 3 subtitles I provided in the last video, but for continuity's sake, I'm going to stick with Dawn of the Paladins, since that's the placeholder that I chose earlier on in part 1. And speaking of part 1, if you guys haven't seen that video, then you should probably go check that out before watching this video. The link is in the description below. But if for whatever reason you guys don't have time to watch it, here's a quick recap of what happened in part 1. In part 1 of Dawn of the Paladins, we pretty much just went over the prologue of my version of episode 9, and we're saving the rest of Act 1 for this video, which is part 2. So, here's what happened in part 1. Kylo Ren and the rest of the First Order have launched a campaign to conquer the Outer Rim, and they've successfully defeated and occupied a bunch of backwater planets that are on the borders of the galaxy. But with each victory that they've won, the First Order's military has shrunk more and more, as they've had to deploy battalions of stormtroopers on each of the conquered planets to help maintain the First Order's rule. So, the First Order needs more manpower, and to solve that issue, Kylo Ren goes to the planet Exegol, and he recruits a race of savage warriors known as the Yuuzhan Vong, who tried conquering the galaxy eons ago and were defeated by the Jedi of the Old Republic. Kylo Ren gains the Yuuzhan Vong's allegiance by beating Supreme Overlord Cash in a duel, and now, Kylo Ren has the soldiers he needs to finish making his vision for the galaxy a reality. Something else that I want to mention is that some of you guys have asked me what my versions of the Star Wars characters look like in my rewrites, so I thought it would be a really cool idea to hire a concept artist to redesign all of the characters that I changed and help bring them to life. So, here's what they all look like. All of these designs were created by Lityzy on Fiverr. He's a really great artist, he was super awesome to work with, and he offers really fair prices. So I highly recommend that you guys reach out to him if you ever need character designs or concept art made for you. I'll leave a link to his profile in the description below. Okay, now that we got that squared away, let's move on to the rest of this rewrite. Act 1. We open on the planet of Kashyyyk, where the Resistance has relocated their headquarters since the end of Episode 8. And just to clarify, there's been a 1-year gap between Episodes 8 and 9, and during that time period, Qi'ra has been going on missions with Luke to help thwart the First Order's efforts in reclaiming control of the galaxy. We see Qi'ra lying in bed, sleeping, and we see her experience a dream where she is a child again, and she's stumbling along through a dark cavern, all alone and trying to find a way out as she calls out to her mother. Little Qi'ra turns around to see a dark version of her adult self standing behind her. But this doppelganger's eyes are yellow with the dark side. She holds a hand out to little Qi'ra.
Don't worry. Come with me, and I will take you to your mother.
Dark-side Qi'ra tries to give a friendly smile, but her piranha teeth frighten little Qi'ra and prompt her to back away in fear. Dark-side Qi'ra hisses with impatience, and she suddenly pounces on the toddler. The true Qi'ra wakes up in cold sweat, gasping for air as her nightmare ends. As she turns to look outside the window of her hut, Qi'ra sees that the dawn is just starting to peek over the horizon. We cut to Qi'ra sprinting through the jungle. A blindfold is tied around her eyes. It's now early afternoon, and Qi'ra is passing through one of her Jedi trials, running through an obstacle course where she has to rely on her senses to overcome multiple obstacles in her way, such as gaping ravines and Marksman H training droids. Qi'ra will have her staff in her hand, the same one that she's been carrying with her since her scavenger days on Endor, and she uses it to defend herself from a pack of Wookiee warriors who ambush her along the trail. One of those Wookiees being Chewbacca himself. Relying solely on her senses and on her connection with the Force, Qi'ra safely evades each of the threats and manages to dodge all of the Wookiee's attacks before pressing forward. Finally, Qi'ra reaches a canyon with a lake at the end of the jungle, and at the center of this lake, sitting on top of a little rock, rests Qi'ra's Kyber crystal necklace, the same one that Lor San Tekka gave her back in the Episode 7 rewrite. Luke reveals himself to be standing at the top of the canyon, and he calls down to Qi'ra, congratulating her on her performance in the trial of skill, but before she can pass, she must complete one final test. Luke closes his eyes and extends his hand. A roar splits through the canyon, and the ground begins to shake. A great monster native to Kashyyyk, known as the Mistengar, emerges from the cave, being mind-controlled by Luke. The Mistengar places itself between Qi'ra and the necklace.
Retrieve the necklace, but do not use lethal force.
Using her acrobatics, her trust in the Force, and Anakin's blue lightsaber, Kira is able to outsmart the Mistengar and force it to retreat back into its cave. She reclaims her necklace and removes her blindfold, earning her applause from Chewie and the rest of the Wookiee warriors who were watching on from the distance. As her reward for passing the trial of skill, Luke allows Kira to craft her own lightsaber, telling her that she is now the first of the Grey Paladins. Using the Kyber crystal from her necklace and reforming parts of her metal staff into a hilt, Kira constructs a blue saber staff to complement her fighting style and her preference for two-handed polearms. Once the saber staff is complete and Kira ignites it and shows it off to the Wookiees, she offers to return Anakin's lightsaber back to Luke, but he tells Kira to keep it as a backup weapon, just in case. Luke will then tell Kira to kneel, and he strikes up his green lightsaber and uses it to knight Kira as the first Grey Paladin, telling her that in the days of old, Jedi Padawans had to pass 5 trials that included the trial of skill, the trial of courage, the trial of spirit, the trial of flesh, and the trial of insight. But seeing as how they're not exactly Jedi anymore and are moving forward with being Paladins, Luke decides not to stick with this formality, and he allows Kira to be knighted after passing the trial of skill. The Wookiees will then cheer Kira on. Kira and Luke will then take a walk through the woods by themselves. Luke asks Kira if her nightmares are continuing, and she confirms that they are. Luke warns Kira that as a Grey Jedi who practices both the light and the dark sides of the Force, it's very easy for a person to become tempted to keep using the dark side if they indulge in it too much. That's what happened to Ben Solo, and it's very possible that it could happen to Kira if she slacks off at all on her self-control. It's critical that Kira sticks to the self-discipline techniques that Luke taught her. Anybody can become corrupted by the dark side, but because of her temper, Kira is much more susceptible than most others.
What can I do to fix it?
For you, Kira, I foresee that anger will be something that you will struggle with for your whole life. There's no escaping the rage. It will always be part of you. But that doesn't mean you have to let it control you. Use what I've taught you to keep your inner peace strong. It's through small, everyday acts of kindness and love that will keep the darkness at bay.
Thank you, Uncle.
Kira suddenly catches herself. Her eyes go wide, and her face turns red with embarrassment. She stutters and asks Luke for forgiveness, since they aren't truly related by blood. Kira's just crossed a line that she wasn't supposed to, and she's panicking, but Luke just fondly smiles at her.
It's okay, kid, I don't mind. Remember, friends are the family that we get to choose.
Kira and Luke will then hug each other in a really touching moment, as Kira thanks Luke for not only teaching her about the Force, but for teaching her about life as well. She never had proper role models growing up, but between Han, Luke, Sam, Chewbacca, and R2-D2, Kira feels like she has a surrogate family now. So, in my Transformers 2 rewrite, I couldn't really tell what the original film's main theme was, and so for that rewrite, I came up with my own original theme, and I based my rewrite around that moral message. And with the Rise of Skywalker, I found myself running into the same instance where I couldn't really tell what the original film's main theme was. And I think that partly has to do with the sequel trilogy being helmed by 2 different directors with completely different visions on where they wanted to take the trilogy. So, for Dawn of the Paladins, here is the new main theme. Anger builds nothing, but it can destroy everything. Each of the Solo children, Kira, Sam, and Kylo Ren, will have character arcs that will reflect this philosophy on anger. Rage and passion are common traits that are shared amongst all 3 of the Solo siblings. So for this rewrite, each of the Solo children will have to decide what kind of relationship they want to have with their own personal anger, and they're going to choose how they want that anger to define them. For Kira specifically, her anger stems from the insecurity that she feels about knowing that her mother abandoned her. Yes, Kira has gotten over a lot of the attitude problems that she had when we first met her on Endor back at the beginning of my episode 7 rewrite. She's learned how to overcome her selfishness, and she's learned how to accept and love herself. But now, she has to learn how to go deeper with her personal growth, and learn how to forgive the people who have wronged her, and contributed to the insecurities that she has today. If it wasn't for her mother, Kira wouldn't have had to suffer so much pain and loneliness in her childhood. It's because of her mom that Kira grew up without love. Something that I thought was cool about all of the character arcs in my rewrite is that back when I did my episode 8 rewrite, I hosted a survey where I asked you guys how you would like to see episode 9 end, and I had already written a couple of notes down for how I wanted this episode 9 to end. But what's really cool is that everything that you guys asked for already existed in my notes, so I guess great minds just think alike. We transition over to Sam Solo and C-3PO on the planet Coruscant, the capital of the New Republic. And by the way, I just want to point out really quick that Coruscant has this new planetary shield set up around the whole planet. It's exactly like the same shield that Scarif had in Rogue One. Anyways, Sam is in the middle of addressing the Senate, and he's pitching to them how much of a threat the First Order really is, and why the New Republic worlds should be taking the war seriously and providing aid to the Resistance. But Sam's words fall on deaf ears. The senators believe that Sam is a warmonger like his grandfather Darth Vader. His connection to the Dark Lord strips Sam of all credibility, and it tarnishes his image in the eyes of the Senate. With the Starkiller destroyed, and Coruscant's new planetary shield at full power, Chancellor Valichum and the rest of the Senate don't believe that the First Order can be a true threat to the New Republic. It even gets to the point that Chancellor Valichum tells Sam that he's lucky that the Chancellor hasn't arrested Sam and the Resistance for war crimes. Frustrated, Sam leaves the Senate building with C-3PO, disgusted with the politicians whom he just wasted his time on, especially Chancellor Valichum, who went so far as to insult Princess Leia and call her a stubborn old woman who never knew when to quit, and that stubbornness is what got her killed. As they walk out, Sam smashes his fist into the wall. The urge to become just as merciless as Kylo Ren in his attempt to secure justice threatens to turn Sam into the very thing that he is trying to destroy. Sam and C-3PO will go to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant to meet with DJ, and while they wait, Sam watches a tour guide lead a group of tourists through the refurbished but currently unoccupied Jedi Temple. It's kind of like the Smithsonian. Exhibits are set up inside the temple, showcasing ancient Jedi relics that were recovered after the war, such as lightsabers from fallen Jedi Masters like Mace Windu. All of these historic antiques are preserved inside glass tanks, like a museum. Ever since the fall of the Empire, Leia funded the Jedi Temple's renovation and arranged for it to be honored as a historical monument, since Luke had decided to train his Jedi students off-planet. This tour of the Jedi Temple is part of Leia's legacy, and Sam mentions this to C-3PO as they wait for DJ. DJ arrives on a speeder bike, and he warns Sam that he has a bad feeling about the First Order not really being active lately. Everything is quiet. Too quiet. Something big is coming. DJ can feel it in his bones, but he doesn't know what it is. And the fact that the New Republic still refuses to get involved doesn't settle DJ's anxiety at all. Sam orders DJ to lay low and remain on Coruscant. He wants DJ to keep in contact with him and update him on any new developments within the capital. Sam and C-3PO will then board an X-Wing and lightspeed back to Kashyyyk. Just as Sam's X-Wing enters lightspeed, another ship exits out of hyperspace and approaches Coruscant. It's a New Republic shuttle, and its pilot requests permission to dock at the planetary shield gate for repairs. To the surprise of everyone, once the shuttle is on board the gate, Sarlacc squad emerges from the spacecraft, and they mercilessly assassinate everyone in sight. Not a single New Republic officer is left standing. They take control of the shield gate, and then radio Captain Phasma.
Shield gate secured. Phase 1 complete.
Roger.
Commencing Phase 2.
Wait. Don't lower the shields. Keep them up. I want them to feel safe.
A handful of First Order ships fly through the shield gate, with Kylo Ren's shuttle in the lead. We cut back to Kashyyyk. The Wookiees of the local village are assembled at the Chief's treehouse, along with the entirety of the Resistance. Sam announces to everyone that Kira has graduated from being a Padawan, and a celebration is held in honor of her knighthood. As the Wookiees and Resistance party together, Sam will make his rounds and float from group to group as he takes the time to socialize with the Wookiees and Resistance fighters alike. Sam will stop when he notices a short teenage Wookiee working on the Millennium Falcon. It's Chewie's nephew Lobaka, whom everyone just refers to as Loey for short. When the Resistance relocated to Kashyyyk, Lobaka became the newest member of the Falcon's crew, and he's been serving aboard the vessel as his uncle's protege, learning how to fly and work with engines. Loey will have a little translator droid attached to his belt, named MTD. Chewie and C-3PO designed and programmed MTD so that the little droid can translate everything Loey says into English. But MTD annoys everyone to no end because of his fussy and annoying personality. So kinda like how Poe bullied and mistreated C-3PO in the Rise of Skywalker, Sam is going to bully MTD because of his annoying behavior. So it'll be a funny contrast to see Sam and everyone else be super nice to Loey, but super rude to MTD, since they know it's the droid's fault and not Loey's for getting on their nerves. Sam will ask Lobaka why he isn't outside enjoying the party. and Loey will say that it's because R2 told him to stay behind and finish the modifications on the Falcon. With a frown, Sam will look over and notice that R2 is off in the corner, playing hollow chess with Chewbacca. Sam dismisses Loey and tells him to go have fun with the others, before he goes over to R2 and lightly kicks the droid, reminding him that he needs to stop taking advantage of the new guy, and that if he catches R2 trying to pawn off his responsibilities on Lobaka again, Sam will add double duty to R2's plate. Back on Coruscant, a protocol droid will be in the middle of guiding some tourists through another exhibit of the Jedi Temple, when all of the monitors are suddenly interrupted and replaced with live footage from another broadcast. This broadcast is being displayed on every digital screen on Coruscant, and this weird interruption catches everyone's attention. General Hux suddenly appears on screen, holding Chancellor Volicham at gunpoint. Hux will go on to give a grand speech, just like how he did in Episode 7 when they unleashed a Starkiller. Hux will announce to every citizen on Coruscant that the planet is now under the control of the First Order. The Senate is being held hostage, as well as all the families of the New Republic's military leaders. If anyone raises a finger to stop them, the First Order will not hesitate to execute all of their hostages. Defiance will not be tolerated. And to prove that they're serious, Hux shoots Chancellor Volicham in the head on live television, threatening the rest of the planet that they will share the Chancellor's fate if they do not fall in line. As Hux gives his speech, fleets of Star Destroyers will descend down over the cities of Coruscant, hovering menacingly over the skyscrapers as shuttles are deployed and battalions of stormtroopers and Yuuzhan Vong exit the ships and begin corralling all of Coruscant's citizens. The planet is gripped with fear. People start screaming and panicking, traffic becomes a mess, and everyone is scrambling to find some sort of safety. The tour group at the Jedi Temple are paralyzed with fear when Supreme Leader Kylo Ren suddenly appears with Sarlacc Squad, and he crushes the tour guide with the Force before ordering everyone to leave. Kylo Ren strides right past the fleeing tourists and descends down to the temple's basement, where he uses the Force to pass through a bunch of security tests and deceives the security system into believing that he is a Jedi. Once all of the doors are opened, Kylo Ren will find himself at a dead end, facing a wall of stone. There's no writing on it or anything. It's just pure rock.
It's a dead end. The intel must have been wrong.
Kylo ignores the stormtrooper and extends his hand while closing his eyes. The stone starts to shift and move, giving way to a new section of the wall. There's artwork on it, kind of like cave paintings. There's a bunch of different symbols and historical figures written on the wall. There are insignias of the Jedi and the Sith, portraits of characters like Yoda and Darth Maul, and even the Mortis gods from the Clone Wars. There's even some scenes drawn out, showing Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting on Mustafar, as well as Vader murdering Darth Sidious. Kylo Ren looks down at one section of the wall and sees small figures of himself and Sarlacc Squad etched onto the wall. Kylo Ren realizes that the paintings on the wall are all recordings of history. Through its artwork and a will of its own, the wall seems to be chronicling key moments in the Force's history. This wall, or vault, or whatever it is, seems to have an intelligence of its own, like it's a living, breathing entity.
What is it?
A portal to a world between worlds.
Kylo Ren runs his hand through the wall, looking for some kind of mechanism to open the door and unlock the portal. He finds an empty hexagon-shaped opening in the wall. Clearly, something needs to be inserted here for the door to open.
All we need is the key.
We cut back to Kashyyyk, where the party for Kira is still going on. Kira will calmly lean back and quietly sip some tea, politely declining any alcohol that is offered to her. Drinking straight from a bottle of brandy, Sam strolls his way towards Kira. So, you find a boyfriend while you were out saving the galaxy?
No? Why?
Well, as your brother, you know I have to watch over my little sister and make sure that she isn't getting involved with any scoundrels.
You mean like you?
Sam will laugh as he takes a swig from his bottle. They both look out at the rest of their friends partying.
I'm a paladin, Sam. How can I raise children while off fighting invaders and warlords? I could never have a family.
I know, but that didn't stop my grandpa, did it? Kira and Sam can't help but laugh at one another's banter. Now that he's back with his family and friends, Sam's bad mood from his meeting with the Senate is washed away. For a few hours, he finally gets the chance to stop worrying about the war and relax. But Sam still has so much anger in him because of his hatred for his brother, that when something as small as a droid bumping into his leg causes Sam to explode and overreact, Kira becomes a little concerned. Sam's grief over losing both of his parents has developed into a toxic sense of vengeance, and that anger has shortened Sam's fuse to the point that any little thing will set him off at any time. This rightly causes Luke to become concerned over Sam, and he comes over and joins Sam and Kira.
You're drinking more. I mean, more than usual. For you.
Sam tries to convince his relatives that he's not cracking under the pressure of leading the resistance, and that he's being strong and steadfast despite his family trauma. Kira and Luke look at each other with even more concern. They don't buy Sam's weak attempts at trying to reassure them, but they choose to drop the topic when Chewie walks up, and after congratulating Kira with a great big bear hug, the lovable Wookiee playfully engages Sam in a wrestling match. What comes next will serve as the inciting incident for this rewrite. Sam and Chewbacca's wrestling match is interrupted by General Emmett, one of the members of Resistance High Command, who's going around the party and gathering up the leaders of the Resistance for an emergency meeting. The Grey Paladins and the crew of the Millennium Falcon meet inside the war room with Titan Squad and the rest of Resistance High Command as a hologram of DJ appears on the war table. DJ frantically informs them all that Coruscant has fallen. The First Order have taken over the planet, the Chancellor is dead, and they're holding the Senate hostage. Sam slams his fist down onto the table, cursing Chancellor Velichum for his ignorance, as he knew that something like this was bound to happen. The pompous old Chancellor had been too stubborn to listen to Sam's warnings, and now everyone on Coruscant is paying the price. Sam decides to come up with a counterattack. They're going to liberate Coruscant, but they're going to do it quietly. Sam formulates a strategy where a stealth team will infiltrate Coruscant and disable the planetary shield with a virus, so that the Resistance fleet can come to Coruscant's aid. Finn volunteers Renegade Battalion for the mission. Renegade Battalion is a military unit made up of all the rogue stormtroopers that followed Finn in his rebellion against the First Order back in Episode 8. And the members of Renegade Battalion can be distinguished from the rest of the Resistance by their customized stormtrooper armor. Finn is the commander of Renegade Battalion, with Janna and TK serving as his second and third in command. And even though TK is a good hacker, Sam decides that it would be a good idea to assign R2-D2 and C-3PO to the mission as extra tech support, just in case. TK immediately leaves and gets to work on creating a virus, while the droids and the rest of Renegade Battalion prepare for the mission. DJ also warns Sam that he heard rumors about Kylo Ren finding some kind of secret door under the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and Kylo Ren is now looking for some kind of key to help him open it. It's something called the Codex. Everyone at the war table is confused. Nobody knows what this is, or has even heard of it. Luke solemnly strokes his beard, and he tells everyone that the Codex is an ancient myth amongst Force users. It's supposed to be a relic of some kind. Nobody knows who created it, or if it even has a creator. Some scholars even hypothesize that the Codex was the creator of the universe. Regardless of its origins, legend has it that the Codex is an artifact of pure energy that can enhance the strength of any Force user's abilities. It has the capacity to be used for both great evil and great virtue. The stories say that once a Force user comes into contact with the Codex, they will be changed forever, as the Codex will unlock all of the user's true potential and transform them into the most powerful version of themselves that they could possibly be. But the Codex is the stuff of legend. It's a fairy tale to both the Jedi and the Sith, but there have been rumors of others who have sought out the relic in the past, and have been forever changed by its divine properties. These rumors say that the Codex is kept by the Ancient Order of Wills, the oldest beings in the galaxy, who live out in the unknown regions. But the Wills themselves are another myth that neither the Jedi or the Sith truly believe in due to a lack of hard evidence. But the fact that Kylo Ren is looking for the Codex troubles Luke. If the Codex does exist, then they can't risk letting Kylo Ren get his hands on it. He's already taken control of Coruscant. If he gets the Codex, he'll be able to take over the entire galaxy. Do we know where we can start looking for it?
The best person to ask would be Maz Kanata. Even for all my travels in my younger days, I never covered as much ground in the unknown regions as she did. She's our best bet at finding the Wills, and with them the Codex. Last I checked, she was stationed on Nelhutta. Is she still there?
Yeah. Ever since I took over, Maz has been supplying us with weapons and ammunition from Lando's operation.
Kira and I will head over there as soon as possible.
Just as the Paladins are about to leave the war room, DJ stops them. He has one more thing to say. He suspects that Admiral Akbar was right. There is still a traitor hiding in the Resistance, because there's no way that the First Order could have overthrown Coruscant without help from the inside. But the meeting is suddenly interrupted by explosions and the sound of blaster fire. The transmission with DJ is suddenly cut off. The alarm is sounded. They're under attack. Everyone runs outside to see TIE fighters soaring overhead as squads of stormtroopers drop down on the tree houses with jetpacks. Hordes of Yuuzhan Vong will begin climbing up the trunks of the tree houses, catching their enemies in a pincer as the stormtroopers attack from above while the Yuuzhan Vong attack from below. The Yuuzhan Vong start screaming out savage war cries and begin attacking everything in sight, catching everyone completely off guard. We've now reached the climax of Act 1, the surprise attack on Kashyyyk. The Paladins will strike up their lightsabers and join the battle, while Sam and Chewie will fight off the enemies back to back. It turns out that Kylo Ren was right about the Yuuzhan Vong. For as fierce and unstoppable as the Wookiees are in battle, the Yuuzhan Vong really give them a run for their money. These savage barbarians can go toe-to-toe with the powerhouse Wookiees without any regard for their own safety. For every Yuuzhan Vong that gets his arms ripped out or his back shattered, a Wookiee either gets bit by one of their snakes, strangled, shanked, or dogpiled by a bunch of Yuuzhan Vong. Sam realizes that they can't hold off both the Yuuzhan Vong and the stormtroopers at once, and he orders everyone to evacuate to their ships and rendezvous on Nat Hutta. The Wookiees will start boarding their ships, as will the Resistance fighters. The Paladins will get separated from the main group during the fighting, and they'll catch General Emmett in the middle of leading a squad of stormtroopers, pointing out the weaknesses in Kashyyyk's defenses and instructing them on where to find all of the Wookiees' hideouts.
You're the traitor!
General Emmett tries to run, but Luke immobilizes him with a force freeze, while Kira dispatches the rest of the stormtroopers with her saber staff. Using the force, Luke will knock out Emmett and lug the general over his shoulder just as a bunch of war cries are heard around them, and they quickly find themselves surrounded by tons of Yuuzhan Vong warriors, who recognize the lightsabers that mark Luke and Kira as Jedi, and they begin to focus all of their attacks on their mortal enemies. Luke will start running back to the Falcon with General Emmett, ordering Kira to give him some cover. While she's running and crossing blades with the Yuuzhan Vong, Kira's force dyad with Kylo Ren starts kicking in again, distracting her, as she tries to keep up with Luke and fend off the attackers at the same time. More and more, the dyad continues to infuriate Kira and test her patience, until she finally lets out a war cry and slams her fist down onto the ground, summoning a great shockwave with the force that blows all of their enemies back and knocks them off their feet. But Kira's attack had more of an impact than she realized. Her shockwave creates a giant crack in the ground that rapidly begins to spread, causing a small earthquake. A crater starts to open up across the floor of the jungle, swallowing up both friend and foe alike. Kira lost control. She forgot her own strength, and it resulted in her losing control of her powers again. As the crew of the Falcon fight their way to the ship, the ground will suddenly split apart in front of them, opening up to a huge crater that's too large for any one of them to jump across. Oh, we're doomed! What are we ever going to do? R2 will then activate his rockets and whistle cheeringly as he flies across the chasm to the Falcon. Oh, show off. Chewie will then grab the protocol droid, and using his massive Wookiee strength, he'll hurl C-3PO all the way across the crater and onto the other side. Chewie will then grab his nephew Lobaka and nuzzle him before tossing him over to the droids. Chewbacca will then grab Sam by the collar. No, wait, what are you? But he's cut off as his co-pilot flings Sam across the crater like a sack of potatoes. Sam immediately jumps back up to his feet, calling out to Chewie in distress as a new wave of Yuuzhan Vong surge forward, about to overrun the brave Wookiee. Chewie will shout across the chasm that he's going to stay behind to hold off the enemy forces and buy his friends some time to escape. Sam refuses to abandon his best friend, and from his position on the edge of the crater, Sam stubbornly keeps on firing at the Yuuzhan Vong warriors. Chewie will then turn back around and pound his chest like a gorilla as he bellows out a mighty war cry and charges into the hordes of enemy soldiers. R2-D2 comes up behind Sam and electrocutes him with his taser, knocking Sam unconscious and allowing Lobaka to drag the general aboard the Falcon. Lobaka will then fire up the Falcon and hover over to his uncle, waiting for him to jump into the hatch so that they can fly off. But Chewie is too preoccupied with the Yuuzhan Vong to get a chance to escape. Fighting alone in his final stand, Chewbacca will rage and fight with everything that he has as he grabs the Yuuzhan Vong and tosses him into the crater behind him, ignoring all of the snakes that continue to bite him and latch onto his body, coiling themselves around his limbs. A pack of Yuuzhan Vong soldiers will then charge forward together and collectively try to push Chewbacca up to the edge of the crater. Chewbacca pushes them back as much as he can, roaring defiantly, but ultimately being unable to stop them. The Yuuzhan Vong will finally decide to tackle Chewbacca over the edge, but not without Chewie pulling all of them down with him. Right as Chewbacca falls in slow motion down this seemingly endless chasm, roaring with rebellion, Kira and Luke appear on the scene.
Chewie!
Kira falls down to her knees in defeat, instant tears forming in her eyes. Luke stares in horror as in the blink of an eye, one of his best friends disappears into the pitch black crater. His Wookiee cries hopelessly echoing back up at them. They were too late to save him. Kira tries to force pull Chewie back, but she gets nothing in response. The Paladins are both snapped out of their shock when a fresh wave of stormtroopers appear, opening fire on them. Together, Luke and Kira jump aboard the Falcon, and they lightspeed away from Kashyyyk. Chewie's death at the climax of Act 1 will fulfill the archetype we sometimes use in writing known as the sacrificial lion. The sacrificial lion is a major supporting character who is killed off to help raise the stakes of the story, and to also let the audience know that the villains are getting serious, and it also helps establish a feeling of danger and desperation throughout the rest of the movie. The death of the sacrificial lion is ultimately unnecessary in the larger scheme of things. It holds little to no plot relevance, but, if done right, it can be extremely relevant for character arcs. Plus, turning one of your side characters into a sacrificial lion does provide a shocking twist to both the audience and the rest of the cast. The absence of the sacrificial lion will change the way that the rest of the surviving characters behave for the rest of the story. In this case, Chewie's death will not only have shock value for the audience, but it will also help propel Sam and Kira's character arcs as they both try to wrestle with the anger bubbling up inside of them. When Sam comes around, he finds out that General Emmett is the traitor that has been responsible for all of the Resistance's defeats. He's the reason Akbar, Leia, and now Chewbacca are dead. If it hadn't been for him, the First Order would have never been able to track the Raddus through hyperspace and launch the attack that claimed Leia's life. Therefore, Admiral Akbar wouldn't have had to sacrifice himself either if Leia had still been alive. And if it hadn't been for Emmett, the First Order would have never found the Resistance HQ on Kashyyyk, and they never would have been able to launch a surprise invasion. Sam immediately unleashes all of his rage on General Emmett as he begins punching the traitor over and over again until the man becomes a bloody mess. First my mother, now Chewie. This is all your fault. It's all because of you. Sam breaks Emmett's nose, dislocates his jaw, knocks a few teeth out, and bruises Emmett's eyes to the point where they close from all the swelling.
Sam! Sam! Stop!
But he ignores her, and he just keeps on punching. Sam's knuckles split open from all the walloping, but he doesn't even care. He just keeps on going. He beats Emmett within an inch of his life, and it takes both Kira and Luke to restrain Sam and pull him back from the defenseless traitor, as Emmett lays on the ground in a pool of his own blood. With the Paladin still holding on to his bleeding arms, Sam sags weakly to the ground, and he lowers his head down to his knees as he begins to cry like a baby. With all of his fury exhausted, now all Sam has is his grief and pain, and the tears just start pouring out over the loss of his best friend. He begins to shake and breathe heavily as he limply drops his arms down to his side. Kira and Luke kneel down and quietly comfort Sam as they wrap him in a warm embrace. Kira blames herself for Chewie's death, claiming that if she hadn't lost control, the crater would have never been created and Chewie would have never died. It's her fault that he's dead. But Luke reassures his niece and nephew that it's not either of their faults. In this moment of sorrow, the last members of the Skywalker and Solo family hold on to each other for support and comfort. And that concludes part 2 of my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 9, The Dawn of the Paladins. In the next video, which is part 3, I'm going to cover the first half of Act 2, known as Act 2A, and delve deeper into the hunt for the Codex. If you enjoyed this rewrite and want me to continue making more videos, then consider following me on Patreon at patreon.com/PhoenixStudios. It really helps me out, and if you guys want to see more awesome rewrites from this channel, then go ahead and subscribe so that you can get notified when a new video drops. Let me know what you all think of this rewrite so far, and I will catch you guys next time. May the Force be with you.